Okay, well, I guess Karen's clock says 2 o'clock. We'll go with that. And we'll call today's meeting to order. Welcome everyone to our council meeting this fine March afternoon. First item, of course, is to adopt the agenda. So our recommendation is as follows: that the agenda for the March 7th, 2022 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Don't think we have any business arising from previous meetings, and we don't have any public meetings today. So we're rolling right along, right into items for consideration. So anybody got any items they'd like to pull out for some further discussion? Lisa, go ahead.
1B, 1C, and 2A. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Steve?
Can I pull 4A?
Okay.
That's the sidewalk machine and the grader. And then 4B, Arthur wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody have others they'd like to pull out? Sherry, go ahead.
4C,
Okay.
the asphalt award.
Yep. Okay, so I'll just recap. We got 1B, 1C, 2A, 4A, 4B, and 4C. Any others? Okay, let's see. Not seeing any others, so we'll deal with approving all the others. So a recommendation here that all items listed under items for consideration on the February 22nd, 2022 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that brings us back to 1B. This is the Saugeen Valley Conservation Annual Meeting. And the recommendation is as follows: that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority Annual Meeting held on January 20th, 2022. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Steve. And with that, we'll open the floor for discussion. Lisa, you want to lead us off?
I didn't have any questions per se. I just pulled it to congratulate Steve and thank Steve for stepping up to be the second vice chair of the committee. And to mention, I'm assuming that these minutes have been approved, but Councillor Dobreen was, I'd like to congratulate her as well from Southgate, but in one spot it mentioned her as vice chair and another spot it mentioned her as chair. And I had to read over that a couple of times. So there's a little bit of a but to clarify, she is vice chair. So.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Lisa. I had to read it again myself. I thought it was just because I was getting older.
But it's proof that we're reading it. So that's good.
We do
Any
that
other questions?
time at Saugeen.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to 1C. This is the Cultural Roundtable. The recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable meeting held on February 24th, 2022, I think that should read. In the minutes, it has one extra 2, or in the agenda. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa, seconded by Sherry. Thank you. And we'll open the floor for questions or comments. Lisa, go ahead.
I maybe could have discussed it in my council report, but it mentions our next meeting coming up, and we are looking at adding some new members to the committee. So I'm just asking if council knows anyone that you think would be a good fit for the cultural roundtable. If you could reach out to either Dale or I, that would be awesome. And just to call your attention, I think, as well, to that beautiful barn quilt design that we've been working on. And I think there'll be more description about that, as all of the colors and the design, they all have significance within that, but I'm not going to go into that because that's not my my area.
Okay.
Those are my only comments.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, Lisa, I didn't hear. How many people are you looking for?
I'm not really sure.
Oh,
A few.
okay.
They have to be a good, oh, look, Dale's popped up.
You want to tackle that one, Dale?
Sure, Mayor Lennox, through you, Councillor McCabe, we're looking for, as Councillor Hearn said, probably as many that would like to step up. The current cultural roundtable, it's a great group of individuals. They've been on the committee for quite some time. They're not necessarily considering stepping down from the cultural roundtable, but it would be nice to be able to support them with 2 or 3 or 4 new members. So our next meeting, which is March 24th, is actually going to be an in-person meeting. It'll be a bit of a social and an opportunity for someone who might be interested to come and check it out in a very informal environment.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 2A. This is the Business Retention and Expansion Program report. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information report EDO 2022-009, being an update on the Business Retention and Expansion Program, and specifically the Wellington County BR&E Implementation Fund. Okay, the mover and a seconder for that, please. Moved by Steve, seconded by Dan. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Lisa, go ahead.
A few comments and a question. First off, I just wanted to take note of the enhancements that are going to happen up in Mount Forest. They look absolutely wonderful. And I'm especially excited, kind of secretly, to see the outdoor gym down up there. It's kind of a little bit of a compliment to our team down in Arthur. That some people questioned, thought it was kind of a silly idea and everything, and it's turned out wonderfully. It's a great, healthy activity, and it's getting a fair bit of use. So just kind of proof that sometimes you have to take risks to find out what is great for a community. So I just wanted to point that out. And just to touch on the Arthur 150 a little bit, probably could have discussed that in the committee minutes or even in my council report. Faye Craig has been reaching out to me all along, and as you can see, they have taking some notes. They're not official minutes, but they're notes. So I'm just hoping that there's an awful lot going on, and that council will make sure that they add the Friday to their calendars, as there will be a fair number of dignitaries, and there's plans for all of us to ride in a parade. So if you could please put that in your calendar now. And I also wanted to ask Dale, I tried to Google SKA design and it said that my browser wasn't supported or something like that. So I was trying to figure out who they are and kind of what they do.
Thank you, Councillor Hearn. Through you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, SKA Design is Stemsky Kelly and Associates. So we have used them the last couple of times to actually update our community improvement program. And so they're a local firm out of Fergus, and they know our community very well, and they know our community improvement plan very well. So that's why we're looking to use them again for this update. And if I can as well, I'd just like to, on the BR&E Implementation Fund, I just want to give a shout out to the county. This has been a great program that the county put in place in 2014 to provide the municipalities with some funding to do these types of things. So a shout out to them for their support as well over the years.
Other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Our next item is 4A. It's in regard to the purchase of the sidewalk machine and grader. And the recommendation reads as follows: that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report Ops 2022-008, being a report on the purchase of a sidewalk machine and grader. And further, the council award the supply of the new sidewalk machine to Premier Equipment Limited at a cost of $70,629.90 plus applicable taxes. And further, the council award the supply of the new grader to Brandt Tractor Limited at a cost of $498,550 plus applicable taxes. And further, the council authorizes the Director of Operations or their designate to sign any agreements necessary to make the purchase. Need a mover and a seconder for that, I guess. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, and we'll open the floor for discussion. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Lennox, and through you, just a quick question for Matt with regards to the snow or the sidewalk machine and the grader. Are there to be expected delays, kind of like with everything in this world right now? It's good that we're replacing our vehicles and equipment, but just wondering, there's probably not a specific date that they're going to be able to deliver it, or what's the status there? Thanks.
Matt, go ahead.
Yep, yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. I think the conversations we've had is that the sidewalk machine will be available by the summer, which means late June, kinda. And the grader will be available by next winter. With both of the units, there's still risk related to attachments because the supplier needs to coordinate those attachments, but all of our conversations have been consistent that the sidewalk machine will be available, say, by July 1st, and the grader will be available by the next winter.
Like not at the end of this year, like 2023?
No, sorry. No, by, I'm gonna say end of September, October, kinda.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Dan, go ahead.
So I guess to you, through you, Mayor, to Matt, sidewalk machine is replacing the Kubota machine that's in Arthur, correct? And did we have in the budget to replace the sidewalk machine in Mount Forest as well? We did. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Yes. Yeah, we, as staff, we haven't figured out exactly how that looks yet, but you're absolutely correct, Councillor Yake, that it's the sidewalk machine in Arthur that we're replacing with this report.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 4B. This is in regard to the Blue Sky Energy report on the Arthur wastewater treatment plant. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information the January 10th, 2022 Blue Sky Energy Engineering and Consulting Inc. review of the 2016 Arthur Wastewater Treatment Plant Class EA summary. And it's a summary of the basis of the development of the design for the ADF of 2,300 meters cubed per day. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Lisa. Seconded by Steve. Okay, I'll open the discussion up. I think you wanted to start this one off, did you, Steve?
Yes, thanks, Andy, and through you, I guess this is probably be at Matt. Great report, very in-depth, gives a great kind of a layout for Arthur and the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant in Arthur. And I know the projections are great, and I think we can build on to the wastewater treatment plant in the future if need be. But how bound are we just with the mighty Conestoga is the only river kind of supplying that? And I know we talked about this at the last meeting, and hopefully there's new technology come on board by that time. But when would we have to re-rate or rebuild or add on after, like, are we going to do this after 2031, or do you see this happening well before 2031? Because that's not too far away.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, this report, I think, is a good news story as far as there's possibility that the Conestoga can receive more effluent from the wastewater treatment plant. I don't think it's conclusive as far as we need to study it, which is inexpensive and it takes a number of years to do that. But I think 2,300, what this report speaks to is that 2,300 was a number that the township gave the engineer who was doing the Class EA. And anyway, there might have to be very significant infrastructure increases as far as the lagoons and stuff like that, but it leaves the door open that until we look at it further, 2,300 might not be the upward boundary as it relates to, again, we're talking about existing kind of process infrastructure. And then if wastewater technology changes in the future, maybe that means something different, but there's certainly an opportunity for council to explore something beyond 2,300 in the future further.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mike, go ahead.
Mayor Lennox, just to further as it relates to the question in terms of when that would be required, Councillor McCabe, the projections to 2031 are just those projections. How quickly the growth actually happens in Arthur has a lot to do with the people at this meeting today, as it relates to approvals, sewage allocations, and the actual development community in terms of how aggressive they are in terms of proceeding. We have plans in place to go to phase 2 at the wastewater treatment plant that gets us to that 2,300 number that's referenced in the report. But we don't have plans to go beyond that. No engineering design has gone into going beyond 2,300 at this point. But what the report states is, to Matt's point, is that there is potential. I think what I read what I saw in terms of the report, it is therefore possible that this receiver could accommodate a higher design average daily flow in the future. So that's a positive comment, but it is a very broad comment. It's not decisive. And to Matt's point, there's a lot of study requirement and there's a lot of investment required in order to accommodate going past 2,300. So that at some point, council is going to have to make a decision as to whether or not we want to, and we're also going to have to determine whether or not there's a growth need beyond that 2,300. I think from a staff perspective, based on the amount of development inquiries and applications we're seeing, we would say yes, but what that looks like 5, 10, 15 years from now it's hard to say what the market may look like then.
And I would just add to that too, because of the nature of the Conestoga River and the limited assimilative capacity that it has. One of the holdups when I first got involved in this file was the fact that we didn't have good data on the flow of the river. And having that good data of the river flows was really important in evaluating the viability of increasing the effluent assimilating capacity. So I think it's just another reinforcement in the fact that we might have to make sure that we have the data, or we're collecting the data now, so that we can get the appropriate studies done and not hold up the process. I know that when I first got involved in this back in 2010, 2011, that data around the river was a big barrier to it. So I think we need to be, and I'm sure staff are already working on this and have been collecting data on a regular basis, but this collection of data at this stage, even before we have to do anything, is really important to carry us through to the next phases. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. We'll move on to 4C. And I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report Ops 2022-10, being a report on the award of the Township's 2022 asphalt program. And further, the Council award the Township's 2022 asphalt program to the Murray Group Limited at a project cost of $1,268,565.80 plus applicable taxes. And further, the Council directs staff to increase the budget associated with the Township's 2022 asphalt program by an additional $490,500 being funded from the Capital Infrastructure Reinvestment Reserve Fund for $300,000 and the unallocated 2022 OSIF contributions of $190,500. And further, the Council authorized the Director of Operations or their designate to sign any necessary agreements with the successful bidders to execute this project. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Lisa. And with that, we'll open for discussion. Sherry, did you want to start us off?
Yes, please. So my question is to Matt, and I'm reading this report and I'm just astonished by the increase on the price year over year, and understand that the times that we're in, everything is inflated. So we're going to see this by your comment, Matt, that construction costs throughout 2022 are going to be much higher. So we can expect to see changes or asks for different funding models for projects that have already been approved, is my first question. And my second question is, do we see this moving forward? Do we see this moving forward past 2022?
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Burke. I guess from my perspective, we increased the budget amount a little last year related to the asphalt program, and on aggregate over the last number of years, the asphalt program has always come in under budget. So, if we had 10 projects, those 10 projects came in under budget. There might have been a project that was over budget and a project that was under budget, but when you aggregated them, we were always in budget. So we have not seen an increase like this as it relates to the asphalt program recently. Yeah, I think it's an indicator. I think the asphalt program too is an indicator of what we might see for construction projects in 2022. But to your second question, Councillor Burke, I have no answer as far as whether 2023 gets more affordable or not, I don't know the answer to that question, but certainly I feel that the budget estimates that we put forward is kind of in the realm of what we always have put forward, and we've always been able to do that program within budget. So these are they're very big numbers. They're probably representative of oil prices and gasoline prices, but it's also something that I think council needs to be considerate of as it relates to project priorities and, you know, which projects are the priorities this year, because we're talking about a $950,000 program that we're asking for an additional 50%. That's not insignificant. So hopefully that helped. Certainly willing to take more questions.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess through you, Mayor Lennox, to Matt. Matt, this doesn't include any of the Highway 89 and Queen Street work either, right? So how is that going to be? What are your thoughts, I guess, on the way prices are, how that might affect that project as well?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. Like, this project represents a 35% increase on what we, you know, from a contract standpoint, what we expected to see, and a 50% increase on the overall project. Queen Street closes next week, so I don't want to say, but Queen Street's a big project, and Queen Street's a project where we're tied to provincial funding. And I guess from my standpoint, I would say Queen Street is probably the priority project. But it might be we'll know next week. We'll know next week by this time, but it might be a really big number too. And anyway, that's kind of scary a little.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a couple, Matt. With this coming in so much over budget, we're anticipating financing it through some dollars that we had set aside either for our reserves or some unallocated dollars. If the Queen Street project comes in significantly over budget, are we depleting our ability to deal with that eventuality from a financial perspective? Go ahead.
Yeah, and to you, Mayor Lennox, I'm not really sure, but any dollars that come out of the pot, I'm sure there isn't necessarily dollars to replace them, kind of thing. So it might, if this was something that we deferred till the next meeting, we would have more understanding as far as what Queen Street East is going to cost us. But yeah, that would be my comment to that. I mean, any dollars that come out of the pot are dollars that we're not going to be able to spend on Queen Street if we award them today, right?
Right. I guess my follow-up question would be, if we defer making a decision on this today, or, you know, say at some point we wanted to change the scope of this project, when you go through a tender process, does the tender process in this case allow us to consider those things legally? Go ahead, Matt.
Yep, to you, Mayor Lennox. So we have 45 days from the tender end, which was February 28th. So the way I figure it, we have the next two meetings that we could decide as far as March 21st or April 11th. I would like to think that staff would be in a good position March 21st to, you know, kind of better understand where we're at, because we'll have the Queen Street tenders at that point in time.
Okay. Mike?
Mayor Lennox, to your second question in terms of, and maybe Adam or Matt can address in terms of whether or not the tender is written to allow that one of the identified projects or two of the identified projects, whether it's Side Road 7 East as an example, could be taken out or deferred. Is that, I think that was Mayor Lennox's other question. Is that flexibility there to remove one of the projects within the asphalt tender.
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. Absolutely, that is. All the parts, all the projects are separate.
Okay, so, but it doesn't jeopardize the quote that we've had if we were to remove one or more of those items. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Well, I'd be open to the idea of deferring this until we do see what Queen Street comes in at, and then I guess it's going to take a discussion to reevaluate kind of where we are. So I'd be open to that idea, just so we're not bound to what we're seeing here today. So if we've got a few weeks to be able to do that, then it'll give staff some time to look at the numbers and get back to us and let us know what they think.
Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Yake, and if he's putting that motion on the floor, then I would second it.
Okay, was that your intent, Dan, to make
Yeah,
the motion to defer?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor, correct?
Yeah, and I was just going to go around the table and see if anybody else wants to discuss, and then we'll come back to the motion to defer. Any other questions, comments at this stage? Okay, so Councillor Yake has made the motion to defer, seconded by Councillor Burke. Any discussion on deferral of this? Okay, all those in favor of deferral? That's carried. Thank you. So that's deferred. We'll look forward to the upcoming report, and we certainly do live in unpredictable times, because when we did the asphalt tender at the county, it actually came in under budget. So it seems there is a lot of uncertainty, and some of that's probably being built into the tendering process these days. Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I think that brings us to the end of our items for discussion. So we'll ask if there's any notice of motion this afternoon. Okay, we'll move on to community group meeting program reports. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on today? Dan?
Yeah, I have a little update in regards to the hospital and the surrounding hospitals. If I could go through that, I've got about 6 or 7 points here that I'd like to bring council and staff up to date on. So I'll just go through those and we'll see where we end up. Just first of all, the number of patients being admitted with COVID continues to decrease in the region, and the current occupancy at the 3 sites is at about 97%. We continue to admit patients from the Waterloo Wellington regional partners. However, those requests have started to slow down, which is good news. Currently, there's about, I don't know if this is right up to date, but it was as of last week, there was about 15 of the staff that have tested positive, and 15 are in self-isolation. It represents about 5% of the overall staff and is not impacting the ability to provide care or services. You're probably all aware the Harrison COVID-19 Assessment and Vaccination Center in Harrison has been closed, with PCR testing services for those who are eligible and vaccinations to anyone in need. It's been relocated to the Louise Marshall Hospital effective March 1st. The 3 sites, Louise Marshall and Mount Forest, Palmerston Hospital, and Groves and Fergus, have all resumed surgical and other procedures at about 70% of capacity as directed by the province, and plans are being put in place with the local specialists to deal with the backlogs, which we know are quite lengthy. Physician recruitment, especially in Mount Forest, is a particularly high priority. I know there was a meeting this afternoon at noon. I don't know if Steve was able to get there. So it's an awfully high priority. And the hospital has reassigned Allison Armstrong to once again lead these efforts. Allison was instrumental a number of years ago with doctor recruitment to get the numbers up. So she's been brought back in to help with that. So that's good news. And also in December 2021, the Ministry of Health announced that there would be base operating funds for 15 new MRI machines as part of their phase 2 funding. Hospitals were invited to submit business cases. And on January 20th, Wellington Healthcare Alliance submitted a business case for MRI funding to be located at the Palmerston and District Hospital site. The review concluded that there was no MRI machine within a 70-kilometer radius of Palmerston District Hospital, and the space is available to support an MRI. We're hopeful that we'll get a positive response. The ministry's indicated that business cases will be approved for funding, or the cases that are approved for funding will receive notice no later than March 31st. So we'll know how we made out at the end of the month, and I'll let council know. And finally, from a board perspective, board and committee meetings continue to be held virtually. We're not sure. We're all kind of in the same boat, trying to figure out whether we're going to go back to in-person meetings, but as of now, that's the way it is. On February 8th, at the February 8th meeting, we welcome 3 new board members. The next board meeting is March 29th, where we will receive the results of a recently completed employee survey, which is always interesting. And the annual general meeting, which hopefully will be held in person, is scheduled for June 21st. That's all.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments for Dan before we move on?
I'll just
Steve?
I can just jump in. Yeah, there was a recruitment meeting today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend it, so I'll be looking for an update from Karen Crows later on this week.
Okay. I just had a question for you, Dan. The MRI machine, I think if we could get that in the rural part of Wellington County would be great. I know I've had to visit Guelph General a couple of times in the last number of years for that, and it would be nice to have it a little more local. But it raises the question for me, we typically talk about, the province builds the bricks and mortar, and then the local community is required to raise the money for equipment. Is this a piece of equipment that would require local fundraising to bring it to reality?
Well, I'm not 100% sure, Andy. They've announced a base operating funds for these machines. So whether it's to keep them operating is going to be local dollars needed to do that. I'm not too sure. I know Dale is still here. He might want to jump in here for a second and just comment on the application and where it stands and how the funding will be achieved.
Okay. Thanks, Dale. You put on a different hat now.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Lennox. So the Palmerston Hospital Foundation has been a money-making, money-raising machine for a number of years, and they put their 100% support behind this application to the ministry, and indicated they would be able to fundraise and come up with 100% of the capital cost of the equipment. As you say, the province provides operating funding, but doesn't provide the cost of the equipment. But that has been covered off with the support of the Palmerston Foundation.
That's great news. I can't imagine an MRI machine is a cheap machine to buy, and certainly that's fantastic news that they're able to do that.
We'll update. We'll let you know how the application makes out here at the end of the month.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We'll move on to other community group reports. I think I saw a couple other hands up before. Steve, did you
Yeah, I can go ahead there, Mayor. And I was just going to say that I had missed the recruitment meetings. It was at noon. And then you saw the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority meeting in your minutes. And that's the only meetings that I've had to attend this since the last meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve before? All right, Lisa, I think I saw your hand up too.
The only thing that I had to report is, unfortunately, Stacy Stevenson has resigned as administrator for the Arthur Chamber and the Arthur BIA. She remains on up in Mount Forest. She's moved on to bigger and better things, so sad to see her go, but now we're looking for a new administrator. I believe in discussing with some of the people that it's still an intent to hire someone in a joint position between the Arthur Chamber and the Arthur BIA, as it is a line that we do have budgeted or allocated in our Arthur BIA budget. So posting for a new administrator.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions? Sherry?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have a question, Councillor Hearn. I was just going to give a brief update, but.
No, that's great. Go ahead.
So last week, Mount Forest Aquatics ad hoc committee met. We had some great discussions on some events that we are hoping to host as we continue to open up here in Wellington North and the province. So stay tuned. We want to fill your summer agenda as much as possible with all of the great events that are going on. It's so nice to hear that the Mount Forest Fireworks Festival is going to happen. So that's a huge draw. And with the Arthur 150, there shouldn't be any reason why anybody doesn't in Wellington North have anything to do. And I also understand that the Hospital Foundation Gala will happen in June. So yeah, we've got a lot of great ideas. Some will be coming very, very soon because they are quite COVID friendly. So just watch for it.
Any questions in regard to any of those reports? Okay, I would just give a little update too. Throughout the last couple of years, we've been meeting, or Mike and I have been meeting with other mayors and CAOs across the county, with the medical officer of health and lead of the paramedic service and police as well. And this morning we had our meeting, and we've declared it our last meeting unless we need to reconvene for some reason. And we'll just pass along that there's still some vaccination clinics going on. In fact, I think there's one in Mount Forest and in Arthur this week or early next. I just forget the dates. But you know, the large scale vaccination clinics are going to scale down, and for the time being, there is some concern that we may see a resurgence of some COVID-19 by the fall. So we may have to get back into some vaccination clinics in the late summer, but we're playing the wait and see game at this point. Who knows how this is going to unfold, but the indicators are all pointing in a positive direction at this stage. And as we come into spring and summer, when people can be more outside, of course, that always helps reduce disease transmission like this as well. So things are looking encouraging at this point. I think we're all very tired of the challenges that have come with the last 2 years, and I think we're all looking forward to turning the page and moving on to a new chapter. And you know, if the need arises, I'm sure this group will reconvene again, but there's nobody sees a need on the horizon at this moment to continue with that for now. So I think that's good news. Yeah, I think that's about all I have for this. Mike?
Mayor Lennox, just as it relates to the vaccination clinics, just wanted to provide that information for those interested. Tuesday, March 8th, between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. at the Mount Forest District Sports Complex, and then Friday, March 11th, between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. at the Arthur Community Center. So those are the upcoming local vaccination clinics. More information is posted on Wellington Dufferin Gulf Public Health's website if others are looking for other dates and locations.
And just to add to that too, I mean, I think probably many of us pre-booked appointments for vaccinations. That's of course is preferred, but they're taking walk-ins as well. So if you know anybody that hasn't got an appointment but would like to get a vaccination, just tell them to go to those clinics and they will look after them. Okay, I don't think I have anything further at the moment. I guess that brings us to, excuse me, the bylaws. So we have a couple of bylaws, and the recommendation is that bylaw number 34-22 and 35-22 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. I got a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion on those bylaws? Okay. I got in trouble. I was joking around with another member of council at county council about the fact that, you know, the historical thing about bylaws was to ask the clerk to read them out word for word. And of course, my joke then got broadcast at the county council meeting, and I'm not sure that the clerk at the county is going to speak to me again or not. Anyways, we didn't ask her to read them out word for word, but I got to be the butt of the joke and have a little fun with that. Anyways, if there's no discussion, I'll call the motion here. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And Karen, no, I'm not going to ask you to read it. We'll move on to our cultural moment. And so we have this is a continuation from last month's cultural moment. Again, submitted by Penny Rankin. Thanks, Penny, and the Cultural Roundtable for these contributions. And about spinning fiber. As with any hobby or craft, nothing seems simple, as there is always so many facets to explore and enjoy. It's the same with spinning. Many decisions to make, starting with the end product. What are you planning on making? That decided? What type of fiber do you need? Blended or not? How thick or thin? How many piles will that be? What color? A fleece from any animal will need to be cleaned. A hand spinner will look for a fleece that is as clean as possible. When washing, the staples should not be agitated in order to avoid felting. The staples can be spun from the actual staple, but most spinners either comb or card the staples using hand carders or a drum carder to separate the fibers. It's at this point that more than one fiber is blended if desired. The advantage is that it can enhance strength or durability to the yarn by blending shorter and longer fibers, or it can reduce the cost by combining expensive fibers with less costly ones, such as merino wool and Corriedale wool. The carded fiber is then known as a roving, which is ready to spin. The rovings are then spun onto bobbins. If the yarn required is for a heavy sweater, then a single ply on each of the 2 or 3 bobbins will then be plied together to create a 2 or 3 ply yarn. When plying, the spinning wheel is turned in the opposite direction from when it was spun in order to create and hold the twist. Whether the yarn is spun smoothly or bumpy for designer yarn depends on the project for which it will be used. The yarn then is wound onto skeins and can be dyed by either using natural plants, chemicals, or even Kool-Aid makes wonderfully bright colors. When cooking with red cabbage, you would think it would make a great dye when looking at your purple fingers, but that dye is transient and not permanent in wool. Now the wool is ready for any project for which it was intended. This toque is made from the fleece of 2 sheep with their natural colorings. It was spun as a 3-ply yarn, is very warm, and has been used since 1993. The combination hood and scarf were created from roving, which has been dyed before it was spun. The 2-ply yarn is warm, soft, and still durable since it was spun in 1994. Again, thanks to Penny and Cultural Roundtable for that. That's your cultural moment. Okay. We'll move on to our confirming bylaw. And reads as follows: the bylaw number 36-22 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North at its regular meeting held on March 7th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Could I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And before we adjourn, I think Mike had some words he'd like to share.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lennox. Appreciate everybody's time just for a couple of minutes. First, I wanted to acknowledge that Amy Tollefson, you'll have noticed the name, has joined us today as our HR manager. I told Amy I wouldn't force her on camera, so we'll just acknowledge that she's here and give council an opportunity to touch base with her as we move forward. Thanks, Amy. But also today, I'd like to acknowledge that this will be Adam's last formal meeting with us as a Director of Finance. Certainly Adam has been a very strong player amongst our team and somebody that we'll miss within our organization. And I think we all wish well. Certainly, I think I speak on behalf of all of staff, senior managers in particular. He was extremely beneficial to the organization and very helpful to all our senior managers in his time with us, and so he will be missed, but we do wish him all the best. So Adam, thanks for your contributions, and we look forward to crossing paths with you. We know you're not far away.
Just thank you for the kind words, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure. In the last 4+ years I've been with the township, certainly the change was not a decision I'd made easily or taken lightly, so I wish everyone the best, and just huge amounts of gratitude for both the senior management and beyond team at Wellington North, and for the council for being so welcoming to a younger man without much public experience in the past. So thank you very much for all the opportunities presented.
Thanks, Adam. I think the pleasure is all ours in this case.
Our loss and Center Wellington's gain.
Okay, I'll just I've got a number of meetings and notices to draw your attention to, and I just wanted to mention something that Councillor McCabe reminded me of prior to the meeting. I don't know, he must think that I'm forgetful these days or something. But tomorrow being March 8th is International Women's Day, and an important day in all of our lives as we acknowledge the important work that all the women in our lives do, both personally and professionally. Just wanted to again mention that, and I understand there's some events happening tomorrow, and I hope those go well. We'll just draw your attention to some meetings and so on. So the BIA is meeting tomorrow morning in Mount Forest. Rec Parks and Leisure tomorrow afternoon at 4. Saugeen Connects event is 6:30 to 8:30 tomorrow evening. The Arthur Chamber of Commerce is meeting on Wednesday. Arthur BIA on that Wednesday as well. Is that not Wednesday, Lisa?
Yeah, that really tripped me up when I saw that. I no, that wasn't yesterday. It said March the 6th. I think it's the 16th. I think.
Okay. And our next council meeting on the 21st, the open house, so the in-person open house for the pool design is October the 23rd from 5:30 to 7 p.m. in Mount Forest Sports Complex. It's going to take a bit of getting used to going back to doing these in person, but I think it's fantastic that we're able to. And the Cultural Roundtable, of course, is having their meeting on the 24th, and that's the one we talked about earlier for hoping for some recruitment. And then the Rec Parks and Leisure meets again April 5th, and our first meeting in April is April the 11th. And I don't think I have any others. With that, I think we'll move on to adjournment. And a recommendation here that the regular council meeting of March 7th, 2022 be adjourned at 2:52 PM. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? That's carried. We're officially adjourned, and thank you, everyone. This